Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Oops. 3 times for me, sorry. How did I forget that? I'm usually good at that. It was bad today. Welcome, everybody. This is a subcommittee on human services, and we will come to order. And the clerk, please take the roll.
Chair Roth.
Here.
Vice Chair Kelly.
Here.
Representative Mueller. Representative Beeson.
Here.
Representative Longjohn.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And Representative Beeson will move to approve the minutes of May 13th, the 2025 meeting. There be no objections. The minutes are approved. Today we will have a presentation, a stakeholder presentation from the child community-based child welfare service. Sorry about that, guys. And we can have Candy Prout, Katie Prout, sorry, Chief Strategy Officer, Michigan Federation of Children and Families, Julie Thomasma, Chief Executive Officer, Child and Family Charities, Jason Sharoff. Sharoff. Oh, I should have known better. Vice President of Operations, Chief Operating Officer, Child and Family Services, Wellsprings Lutheran Services. Come on up, all three of you. We'll have you come up together as a group and make sure the little red button's on the mics. And whoever wants to start may, and then we'll go to questions after you're all three done. Thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Are you able to hear me okay? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Well, good morning, Chair Roth, members of the committee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today. I'm Katie Prout, and I'm here on behalf of the Michigan Federation for Children and Families, where I serve in the role as Chief Strategy Officer. The Federation is a membership association representing more than 60 nonprofit community-based organizations that contract with the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services to provide a full continuum of child welfare and behavioral health services across all 83 counties in our state. The Federation has been a trusted voice and collaborative partner in Michigan's human services sector for nearly 60 years. The mission of the Federation is to influence public policy and practice in support of the highest quality of services to kids and families. Our Federation member organizations are mission-driven organizations. They play a pivotal role in providing services and positive outcomes for the overall health and well-being of children and their families using a two-generation or two-gen approach in Michigan communities. I'd like to offer that nearly 100% of the family preservation, independent living, adoption, and residential treatment services, and more than 50% of foster care and juvenile justice services are delivered by community-based organizations throughout our state. Our members have an established statewide network of home visiting counseling and behavioral health services throughout the state. But I'd like to share that community-based nonprofits are not merely contractors with the department. They are the backbone of Michigan's child and family serving system, and they have very deep roots in local communities, allowing them to really respond quickly, tailor services, and meet the needs of families and support sustaining positive outcomes for children and family over time. Every budget decision that you all and your colleagues are making echoes through the lives of Michigan's children. Ensuring community providers have the resources to deliver high-quality services safeguards not only child and family well-being, but also strengthens our local economies by sustaining nonprofit jobs throughout the state. As a member-driven organization, the Federation does advance budget priorities annually based on the voice expertise of our members, who you will hear more from next. And in connecting with our members, the fiscal year 26 budget priorities of the Federation were established with the hopes of closing critical funding gaps and reinforcing the stability of Michigan's continuum of care. The Federation's budget priorities are also informed by data gathered by the state's contracted third-party actuary. We do support the governor's executive budget recommendations in the areas of adoption support services in the amount of $4.9 million and a $1.9 million recommendation to invest in independent living plus programming that supports older youth in our communities. We're also requesting your support in closing the foster care funding gap to increase the administrative per diem, expanding family preservation services to promote more children and families remaining safely together in their communities. We also are hoping to prioritize behavioral health loan repayment for nonprofit providers, which has been supported by the state as well. We will discuss further a request to build a cost of living adjustment into all of our contracts, recognizing that is critical, again, to reimburse providers for the actual cost of providing services and closing the funding gaps that currently exist. So with that, my colleagues and Federation members, Jason Schroff and Julie Thomasma, will share more about the impact of these budget requests on their organizations. And we just really want to thank you on behalf of the Federation for your support. We're incredibly grateful for all the work that you committee members do and recognize the impact that it has on Federation member organizations statewide to carry out their work on a day-to-day basis. So thank you all for your leadership. It really has a direct impact on services. We look forward to working with you to ensure every child and family has access to the services they need to thrive across generations. And with that, I will turn it over next to Jason.
All right. I think I got it. Good. Everyone can hear me. Thank you, Chair Roth and members of the committee. I'm Jason Schroff. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Wellspring Lutheran Services, and we're one of the member organizations of the Michigan Children Federation, Michigan Federation for Children and Families. And Wellspring has been around since 1893. It's a long time, serving families in need, and started from Lutheran churches in the areas of Monroe and Bay City, who really saw needs in their families or needs in their communities and said, how do we support that? And so I'm thankful to be able to talk a little bit about how we support families throughout the state of Michigan and how our fantastic staff and foster parents are a part of that. So one of the things about Wellspring, I've been here for nearly 20 years. This is my 20th year. I started as what was called a Families First worker. We employ a lot of Families First workers. In fact, we're the largest provider of what are called family preservation services in the state of Michigan. And these family preservation services are the services that come into place really to ensure that children are safe when there's been some allegation of child abuse or neglect. And so you'll see referrals that come from school teachers or concerned neighbors or relatives or hospitals or doctors where there's a potential incident of child abuse and neglect. And then CPS will do an investigation, and they will oftentimes call our family preservation services to come in and work with the families to try and ensure the first thing is that the kids are safe and that the adults in the home are also safe. And this happens in all 83 counties. We have these services. They are vital to ensuring that the most needy families in our communities are safe and that the children, in particular the vulnerable ones, the children there are safe. And there are some really unique features to these services. The first is they're home-based, which means our workers are going into the family's home and providing some sort of service, whether it's kind of crisis counseling or teaching or a concrete support in that family's home. And in our rural counties, we have contracts that can be up to 5-8 counties. So we can have workers driving from Benzie County and then to Wexford County later in the day, and they're going into families' homes to make sure these kids are safe. All with the goal to support those parents to ensure, okay, what are the strengths already in the family? This is the second thing about family preservation, is we're strength-based, knowing if we're gonna work with the family for a short time, we can't just say, what's all your problems and how do we fix them? Instead, it's faster to say, what are the strengths? What's going well? How do we use those to ensure safety here? How do we limit those safety concerns by building on your strengths? The third feature is that these services are time limited. Families First of Michigan is a 28-day program, meaning we come in, there is some sort of concern, could be child abuse was identified from physical punishment. We say, okay, we gotta teach new ways of disciplining kids that are safe. And we're gonna teach those things, and if you can demonstrate in a month that you've been able to do it effectively and the kids are safe, we're going to get out of your hair and make sure you can go and do the things you need to do as a family. We're going to find supports within the community or your own family. Other programs can last up to 4 to 6 months. In fact, I was talking to a colleague, Simona, just before I came over here in our Lansing office, and she said, I'm making a recommendation today. I've been working with the family for 6 months. They've been reunified. The kids were in foster care and came and said, we just need to get out of their hair now. They've done all the work. They need to move on. So these time-limited aspects of the services are really important. Next, they're teaching focused, meaning often when we're working with the families, there are just certain skills that they may not have. Even skills in, like, how do we keep a home clean, make sure there's not environmental neglect, skills I know that I have deficits in, like budgeting, of like, okay, there's a lot of different things coming in. Let's help you make sure we have these payments so we're not at a place of we're losing power and you're losing power and heat and then it's not safe for your kids. And we teach those skills. Families are empowered and move forward. And the most important feature, I think, is that they're successful. Over 90% of the families we work with, at the end, the kids are still at home. They've not been removed and placed into foster care, which means this is keeping kids not only from the cost of foster care to all of us, of taking kids out of the home and placing them into a foster home or a relative home, but also the cost of trauma, the cost of those kids having the experience of, I've had to be removed from a parent. And as a state, talking about that idea of, you know, we have kids who are placed in out-of-home placement, like foster care or residential services, both which Wellspring also provides. But as a state, we currently spend 5 times more on the children outside of the family home in foster care and residential services than we do on the kids who are with their parents in these family preservation supports. And PCG did a cost analysis last year in kind of ended in the summer of 2024, and it found we're funding these services at about 45% of the actual cost. And so we're asking for consideration in closing the $11.5 million funding gap in that. Knowing, again, this is funding to bring services, like community-based services, bring workers into families' homes in their own community, and to keep kids with their parents. Vitally important. It's not only a cost savings, but it's also like a community-based program. Unfortunately, not every family, that's going to work. And I told you I was at the office earlier talking to staff, and I had another staff member who she had a much worse experience working with her family. Things weren't going well. She went to a visit one day, and a baby, the baby typically didn't have a shirt on. This is fine, a few months, you know, a couple months old. All of a sudden, had long sleeves on. She started that, got her a little curious, and looks, and there's burns on this young baby. Assessed the situation, made some calls. These children, it had spiraled out of control and was not safe. And so thank goodness we had a family preservation program there to assess it, but also thank goodness we had foster care, because at this time, it's not safe for those kids to be in that environment. And they were removed, placed in foster care. And as you probably know, foster care, about 55% of foster care is done by community-based private agencies like us. And as of Friday, on May 16th, there were 9,977 children placed in foster care in the state of Michigan. We keep hovering at about that 10,000 number, and somehow I think feel a little victory when we get under 10,000, but still, like 9,977 kids. The homes were not in a condition, or the parents weren't able to provide service or protection, or like they were being abused in ways that were harmful, and they needed the resources of foster care. And so I just want to talk about the goal with foster care, of course, is to ensure we work with those parents to deal with whatever those needs were. The primary goal is let's get the kids back in what we call reunification. Next month, we're going to celebrate Reunification Month, and we'll have reunification days and beautiful stories of parents where the kids were removed and we were able to have them come back. And so I'm going a little long here, but I get passionate talking about this stuff. And once I said the number, it's striking to me of, yeah, these are actual kids in homes right now who are going to bed not seeing their parents, right? And being tucked in sometimes by strangers tonight. And so what we're asking for is to ensure in those situations that we have the right kind of funding to ensure those kids get the needs they have, and we have foster parents that are available to take care of them. We've talked last year about a funding gap, and again, we recommended last year that we'd have a $70 per day per diem. We were able to move it from 55/20 to 60/20 last year, which we thank you for. But that's still a considerable way off from what we are saying, like showing we need. And so we're asking for consideration to our budget recommendations there. So I'll move to closing here. I'm proud to work at an organization that's existed since the 1800s, founded to meet the urgent needs of children and the elderly in our local communities. Today, Wellspring continues that legacy by transforming lives and strengthening families every day, like I was talking about our workers. But we can't do it alone. Your support is vital. Join us in creating a future where every family has the opportunity to grow, thrive, and build a brighter tomorrow. Together, we can make a lasting change. Thank you. Go ahead, Julie.
Great, thank you, Jason and Katie, for teeing this off, and we really appreciate Chair Roth and the committee the opportunity to speak to you today. So I'm the CEO at Child and Family Charities, and Child and Family Charities has been an organization that's been serving the community since 1911, and our roots are with adoption and foster care, but since that time we've expanded our programs, and now we have over 30 programs, and we reach over 20,000 individuals every year. We just celebrated a grand opening here in Lansing. We repurposed the former McLaren Greenlawn campus, and so we have been bringing together nonprofit partners, leveraging resources in the community, and just really working together with our community to make sure that we're serving the needs here in Lansing. So as a private agency, we just recognize the importance of that partnership with the department. As you have heard, we do 100% of the adoptions in private agencies in Michigan. We also do all of the residential and independent living programs and about 50% of the foster care cases. So it's so important that our contracts reflect actual costs and the demands of this work. So first I'd like to talk about adoption rates. I wanted to thank you because, and the department, because this year we finally had an adjustment to adoption rates, and it does feel like it's working well. I've gotten a lot of great feedback from our team that the new rates are reflective of the work. However, we do have many kids who are still on our caseloads that came into care prior to when those new rates came into effect. So as of October 1st, we have new contracts, but prior to that, we had a full caseload. All of my adoption workers have full caseloads with the old rates. And so what we're asking for is a $2 million one-time funding request to support all of those kids who were in care prior to that October 1st date. Additionally, the $4.9 million that we talked about earlier is critical because we want to make sure that we're fully funding this program. So that means fully funding the MARE program, which is all of the children that are looking for homes for both the child side and the family side, so that we're funding the agencies that are working with both of those groups. So basically, we're asking that that the adoption is fully funded and that we're looking at kids no matter when they entered the system to be fully funded, and that we can fully support them. Also, COLA. To me, this is one of the most important things. This is a way that we don't have to keep coming back to the committee every year asking for an increase, but that all of our contracts have a cost of living built in. We know that the department gives increases to their workers every year. That's why a lot of times we lose our workers to the department, quite honestly, because we can't keep up. And we know that it's really important for a child to stay with their worker throughout the time of their case. And if we're constantly turning over staff and unable to maintain staff, then we're not doing the children any service. So it's really important that we have parity between both systems, both the state workers and the private providers. So we're asking that that's built into contracts so that we don't have to keep coming back. And then also I want to talk about our Independent Living Plus crisis. I'm going to call this a crisis because this also relates to our residential beds. So since in 2019, we had 990 youth in residential treatment beds, and now we only have 314 youth in residential treatment. So where have all those youth gone? And the answer is many of them have gone into independent living plus programs. And so we have a program called Angel House. It's located in Mason. We used to be a residential program, a mother-baby program, but to be honest with you, we couldn't continue that service because the complexity of the cases were very severe and the rates just didn't reflect the services that we needed to provide. So we converted that program a couple years ago to an independent plus program, but I will tell you that the cases the referrals we're still receiving are still very severe and the rates have just not kept up. Our rate right now is $210 a day. And at Angel House, we have mothers and babies there. So we are caring for all their prenatal appointments, ensuring they have education opportunities, that we're coordinating work opportunities, all the things that they need to do to transition successfully into adulthood. So that's a 16 to 19-year-old youth that is so critical that we're giving them all those supports so that we're getting them into the community before they age out of the system. But it is just severely underfunded. So agencies like mine, we fundraise, we ask the community to help us, and we're very fortunate that we have that community support, but really this should be something that is fully funded by the state. I can tell you it's a very successful program. It's graduation time, so I get to hear all the graduation stories of our youth who are graduating from LCC or some of the trades, and then they get to go on and continue. We're constantly hearing back on touch points of youth that are successfully parenting in the community, that have broken those cycles. Those children in our home are not in foster care, so the children of the youth are not in care. It is so important that we're treating those families like a family unit and keeping those kids out of the foster care system. So the youth's child. And so, yeah, with that, we are requesting a rate of $403 per day. And so PCG actually said that we are underfunded by 2 or 3 times at that 210 rate, and so we're asking a very moderate increase compared to what PCG recommended or has suggested would be an appropriate rate. So I just want to emphasize in closing that private agencies, we're not just willing partners, we are here to help with this child welfare crisis. We want to be part of this solution. And we know that the stakes are high. These kids are tomorrow's leaders, workers, parents, and community members. When we invest in them today, we are investing in strength, safety, and success for our entire state. We know that this is the future of our state. So with your support, we can ensure that no child is left behind. And we really appreciate all the work that you're doing to make sure that that happens. So with that, I want to open it up to questions for our team. I know we're all here ready and willing to answer however we can.
I appreciate the testimony very much. I've got a few, but I'll open it up to members first. Representative Long John, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for being here today. In addition to your testimony in the materials that were passed around, there was quite a big focus on behavioral health services. I'm wondering if you could add to your testimony already given about the needs that you're facing in relationship to behavioral health and help us understand what the situation is there. I know in Southwest Michigan, our PIPs are really worried about being able to keep the lights on and funding, and so the whole system seems like it's in a precarious place. And would love to get your perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'd be happy to jump in a little bit, and then I know these organizations provide those services directly, but from a statewide perspective, we do have members that provide behavioral health services in all 83 counties. They provide services in homes as well as clinic-based services, and we have several members that are certified community behavioral health providers, CCBHCs, which has been great growth and expansion for our state to ensure that they're able to meet the needs of anyone who is looking for behavioral health services. There has been a lot of new investments in that area, in particular to CCBHCs, and our members are hoping to continue to see that continue to grow. But as we know, the state is prioritizing a redesign and rebid of those PIHP contracts. While our providers do not, they work directly with the PIHPs and their local CMHs to ensure that they are able to deliver services in the community. We've been meeting with them to understand where their priorities might be in the redesign, and so we'd be glad to follow up with you in particular as they're pulling together some position papers, as a lot of these changes have been coming down in the interest with the department to rebid those contracts. And maybe Jason might be able to speak a little bit more to some of the needs there.
Yeah, I can speak. Wellspring doesn't currently have any contracts with PIHPs. We provide some outpatient counseling and then have a contract with DHHS to do SUD, home-based SUD services. What I will say generally is that as we're working with families and children and adults struggling, needs seem to be more acute. I think teachers are saying this too. We also provide some school-based counseling, and seeing that as we're doing redesign, I just think this is like you're asking the right question, because we're looking at, there's a redesign happening in the department too, but in the midst of redesign, where I get nervous is we're also seeing really acute needs, and we're seeing those needs with kids and families, and knowing that as we're coming, it's really hard to make some of the changes I talked about in family preservation if you have unmet kind of behavioral health needs. And so I can't talk to that PIHP concern, but just kind of as a general, how are things going? That's our experience.
Yeah, I would echo the same, that the acuity of the needs have changed. And what we find is the rates don't keep up, and then we 100% subsidize our psychiatrists and our psychologists because they're just not included in any rate, and we want to make sure that all of our kids in foster care and residential have those services. So we just provide that as an agency and fundraise to be able to provide that. But I know that doesn't get to your very specifics, but there's a lot to the system, and we
Yep.
just try to navigate it the best we can and then make sure the services are there despite the funding challenges.
Thank you for what you're doing. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate that, and I know Representative Kelly, just a CCHBC's. A little bit of concern in rural Michigan. Grand Traverse County has now been listed as a metro area. Great for them, but not so much for Antrim, Kalkaska, and Benzie. They can't provide those same services that are required in that. So just so we're on target, when we're talking about redesign, we need to make sure that's part of that redesign. So Vice Chair Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for some edification, I'm not steeped in these kinds of things, but Julie, the issue of adoption rates, why do they change? What are we talking about here?
So as of October 1, we have new contracts, and so the adoption rates reflect the level of needs of the children. And so we feel like those new rates are reflective of kind of
Who sets these rates?
the department set the rates, and I believe they did that in conjunction with PCG.
And they increase the rate?
So the rates have been increased, but it's only for children who we've received referrals for after October 1. And so, for example, we had a subgroup of 6 that we took in on our caseloads right before October 1, and they will be on the old rates.
What's the rationale for increasing rates?
In order
I
to pay
mean,
for,
Yeah, so can I add, because we also do adoption. So there are not only increased rates, they changed the method of payment. So we were getting paid at the end of a successful adoption. So you would get paid at the end. You could work sometimes for years. And the one of the rate changes was we want to incentivize. There is, like, if you want a heart-tearing day, go to mayor.org and look at kids making videos asking people to adopt them, right? Like, we have kids who are longing to be adopted and are what we're calling unmatched. So they have no one right now that is a prospective to maybe adopt them. And those were the cases that were unfunded. You could work for years trying to do it, work with those kids, take them to match parties, which is another, it's a good idea, but also a scary day for a kid meeting prospective people that might be their parents and then not being matched. And so those are the cases we're saying, like, hey, we want to hold on to those. Last thing we want to do is stop working with those kids, right? They're the most needy kids we have in the state. No one that can support them permanently. we want to be compensated in the way the contract already agrees we should be. Just compensate us for the ones that were already on our caseload. For us, Legacy Adoption Services, we co-own, and 20% of our cases are these unmatched, unpaid for cases. So,
You're still providing services, so now we will receive a per diem per day to be able to provide and coordinate services for that child. But those cases prior to October 1, we do not.
Then you were mentioning, so these kids at your graduation day that are graduating LCC or whatever, and then all of a sudden now they're in the community, they're taxpayers that they're working, but you're talking about working with their youth, their children. So these are people, these are adopted kids that have aged out or left. So what is the need to keep this tethered to this client?
Yeah, if I might, I think it might be helpful context to understand that a lot of the youth in the mother-baby residential treatment programs are young people ages 16 to 19 who are in the foster care system themselves and are finding themselves parenting. So they are youth who are either temporary or state wards of the state, and they are finding themselves in a position of parenting as well. So a program like Angel House.
But that's the natural progression. They're parents. Why again is it necessary to involve you?
Well, we provide continued support, so.
Why, if they've adopted out?
A lot of them check back with us and just want to check in with our staff or volunteers that they've worked
Are
with.
they
for years.
encouraged to do that?
They're welcome to do that if they would like to. And a lot of them do want to check back and just say, hey, I graduated, I made this next step, and they're just really proud of the progress they've made.
Well, but they are and they aren't.
Yeah.
I mean,
And some people, and there are cases, yeah, where they struggle. But yeah, so they're encouraged to do so if they need us, and so they always know that we can be a lifeline. We have services for youth up to age 24. We know that the brain doesn't fully develop till age 25, and so it's really important for us. We really focus on that age group that, hey, if you ever need us, come back. Don't be lost out there. Don't be wandering around wondering what your next step is. Know that we're a safety net here for you if you do fall down. So we have had youth come back and say, can you help? But likewise, it's nice to hear the success stories too. When youth come back and say, hey, guess what? I got past this step. I made my dream of being a nurse or whatever that might be. So we get to hear those too.
All right, and just to comment on your request for an increase, you said that somebody said it was worth $600 or $700. You said it was a moderate increase. It's 100% increase.
We've never had a rate increase for independent living, so it is so far behind.
All right.
And so that's the reality of our rates, just not up to par.
Thank you, Chair.
Representative Beeson.
Thank you for being here for your presentation and having that Lutheran. I know exactly where that is over there by where the Tibbetawasi River kind of comes in. My question is to Julie first. You're a PhD?
Yes, in clinical psychology.
Perfect. I have a wife that's an LPN. I used to call her shrink, but I got it wrong. Licensed professional counselor. Make sure you get that right when you're referred to. Can you tell me the age when your brain develops, and say this your brain develops when you're a young lady? When does that finish getting developed?
25.
25. Excellent. My concern is sometimes we do things to, people make bad decisions, whether you're male or female, at 18, 19, 20, and 25. I just needed that stated because I'm kind of curious. The other question was, you guys have nonprofit loan repayment. I think your place is for profit.
No, it's a nonprofit.
Okay. My other question is we have a lot of nonprofits in this Regency, right? In this whole area of what we do. The problem is with nonprofits, they really don't pay taxes. I know that we're looking the other way, right? And we have a nonprofit loan repayment if you're in the system. So if you pay for your college, right, or something, is it?
Yes, thank you for that question. The department did start a loan repayment program to attract and retain behavioral health clinicians to be able to deliver services to those seeking behavioral health supports in the community. The past 2 years, to our knowledge, none of the loan repayments have gone to any case managers who are employed by nonprofit organizations. So we're just asking for some additional funding to support retention and recruitment of those clinicians in nonprofit organizations as well.
Because there's quite a shortage, right?
That's correct.
Okay, that's my concern is we're trying to, and I think that it's great that we pay for or figure out how to way to get them here or keep them here, as long as they have skin in the game and they stay here for the length of time. Because it seems like every hospital does it. Like, why don't we do it with this? And I hope we get some people in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Vice Chair Edwards.
Thank you. I just had a couple of clarifying questions. One, these children come into care and they deal with traumatic experiences. So typically at 25, they may not have developed like a normal child that was not in foster care, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the other aspect is, I totally forgot what that was. But, I mean, I just really want to highlight the traumatic experience these kids experience. And the reason why they come back to you guys is because of the relationship that you establish with them. They trust you, they love you, and they think that you're a provider or a supporter that they can come back and have those relationships with. Can you highlight some of that stuff?
Yes, and so, as I mentioned, that our programs really do focus on that age range up to age 25, just because we know it's so critical that those youth has supports. I kind of equate it to, when you go off to college and you go in your parents' basement and you grab everything that you ever needed to go off, and a lot of our kids just don't have that. They don't have that safety net. They don't have those people to lean on, and we become kind of their pseudo-family. And so they know they can come back to us. We have a Family Growth and Resource Center. Hey, I'm short diapers this month. I need some help. Whatever that might be, they know they can lean on us if they need us, but we also really focus on independence and building those skills so that they can be independent as it's developmentally appropriate for them. And so we try to make sure we're wrapping around services while they're recovering from, like you said, trauma does delay some things. A lot of our youth are catching up. I mean, for example, when they come into Angel House, often we see that we're in a credit recovery type of situation where they've bounced around so many foster homes that they don't have any credits. And so we're working on all of that, getting them caught up to an age appropriate level. And so, yeah, I do think that that's definitely something that all of our agencies are working through all the time. But that's why it's so important to invest in these programs, because these private agencies, we are the ones wrapping the supports in the community, and we can build natural villages for people. We're connecting them to their local churches, clubs, whatever that might be, where they can fit in and also receive that in a way that's community-based.
Thank you for the question. I've got a few. Let me understand the rate increase to 60/20. The department agreed to that amount, but then decided not to pay that amount? Am I getting this?
Yeah.
Let me get it in the right sequence, so then we had to create a lawsuit in order to get the 60/20. Let me run that through me so I make sure I'm exactly
Sure.
correct on this.
So a couple things were happening at the same time. One, our advocacy for an increase, which was placed in boilerplate to make it to 60/20, and at the same time, the state was creating new contracts in which they're trying to drive outcomes that are ensuring that kids are visiting with their siblings, which is really good, and ensuring that we're providing visits to those children, which is really important. However, if those are failed to meet benchmarks, there was going to be initially a credit given back to the state of 10%. And so what they put in the contract.
Out of your service.
What's that?
Out of your services.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So actually what we had the contract as written is that we're being paid less than 55/20, 5408. And if we meet those benchmarks, then we get the 60/20 because we've met the benchmarks that were. So that's what led to those who participated in the lawsuit to say, hey, I'm pretty sure the contract said we're supposed to get 60/20. Let's talk about it. We're getting paid 5408 right now. And so I think tomorrow's the meeting of kind of when we have not signed new contracts on that, but my understanding is that it's going to be resolved. Will be 60/20 moving forward. in all those contracts. Do you have anything, did I handle that right?
Thank you. The department has been paying the rate of 60/20 to providers since the lawsuit was finalized, essentially agreeing that the rate that was provided and boilerplate and through the appropriations process was intended to be paid in that structure.
Are there any added requirements to receive that?
At this time, agencies have not received any amended agreements to be able to speak to that.
Okay. Maybe elaborate a little bit on the independent housing again. Just how does that continuum care go? Independent living, sorry, what did I say? Did I mess that up again? Independent living, sorry. Run me through that continuum and when they go from foster care to independent living.
Yeah, well, we know that youth who are older are often harder to find homes for. And so the reality was a lot of those youth were ending up in residential placements. And so with the shrinking of beds and the number available, I think it was a natural progression that youth were starting to be referred to independent living plus programs. And so as we see it, it's kind of a step down from residential. So in theory, these youth should not need as many services as residential, and they should be very independent and able to manage things on their own with the support of our staff. And then we help them essentially age out of the foster care system. Most of our youth are not looking to be adopted, but we're rather trying to get them into an independent living situation post our supportive home environment. And so we're wrapping all those services, supports, making sure that they are finishing school, working toward employment, all those things that they need to do to be independent. And so it's kind of this, on that continuum, we have the foster care placements in a home, community-based setting. We have our kind of aggregate home with, we have 10 youth in our home. And then, residential placements as well for the most severe cases in the state.
And maybe one more question. Run me through the preservations field again.
Yeah.
Is the state providing any funds in the preservation, or is it all federal at this point?
Yeah, no, those are, what are the dollars?
The family preservation contracts are funded through state and federal match dollars.
Okay.
Yep.
And what we're hearing is there declining services in that preservation services.
So what we've seen is the utilization of those services have been dropping. And that's been dropping for a couple of reasons. One, there are less, well, I think our population of children is going down, but also there are less calls being substantiated for abuse and neglect, and there is referrals that are coming less frequently. And so we're seeing this service that can really be, I see you're, do you want me to clarify that?
Yes, please.
Okay, so you get a call in, there's a potential abuse and neglect, call goes into the hotline. We were 5 years ago, one of the states that was most likely to open an investigation. We were in the top 10% of states to do that, which is not great. Not every family where there was a concern, you need to open an investigation and see. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, there was a loud noise. That doesn't mean you need to go there, or a kid didn't have a coat on. Like, that doesn't mean they're being abused. It just means that they didn't want to wear a coat. But there are other times investigation needs to happen. So what I'm saying is we've had less investigations. As we have less investigations, we have less substantiations, and then less referrals to the system. Also, what had happened was we had a redesign of what was called the front-end redesign of CPS. And there were a lot of changes both for CPS staff and for family preservation staff. And referrals were harder to make happen. And so we kind of created this base of referrals were harder to happen. And we had rates that were established. We bid on rates in January of 2020. I was awarded rates, I remember, in June, awarded contracts in June of 2020 when I was sitting at home, of course. And so we know costs have changed a lot since then. So our ability to retain staff, keep staff, has been hard. And so there have just been less access to services because there have been less people employed to do them. And so some of what we're saying is we got to fund those services because if we have family preservation services available and we're able to see those families, we keep them out of foster care, then eventually we keep them out of independent plus or residential services, and we keep them in their communities where they get jobs and pay taxes and, you know, do the things the rest of us are doing.
One last, anybody else? Are you having enough interaction with the department in conversations? Just, do they meet with you enough in your eyes? Could you use more communication or more interaction?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a great question. As we're highlighting like the percentage of services that are provided by community-based organizations, I think that it really speaks to the need for a very strong partnership between community-based organizations and the department. They can't deliver all the services statewide that these organizations are able to do in their communities without us, and vice versa. We need to work together to ensure that our organizations are delivering, the services that they're seeking statewide. So we are always, I think, in that continue dance of partnership and working together, and something that we are always striving to strengthen and improve.
Seeing no other questions, I thank you all very much for your presentation today. I'm glad you came forward and had a conversation with us, so appreciate
You
that.
all, we appreciate it.
Thank you, and there are no absent no absent members, so there being no further business, the meeting is adjourned.